don't see the time here. I think I just saw it now. So if I'm getting close to 7, just wave at me or interrupt me. Okay. I would much rather you interrupt me and us have time. I don't want to take more time. I know everybody is busy, but this is a topic that is I'm very passionate about. When you talk about thinking big, and I was raised in a home with a mother and a dad that were very loving, very positive people. My mom put in me a self-confidence, and I know there's a lot of people nowadays that were not raised with that confidence. But I want to tell you that whatever confidence you don't have to do what you want or need to do for God, God can more than enough give you what you need to do, what you want to do for Him. But I was raised in a wonderful home, and I was always learned. I mean, we were always busy in the church. We were always working in the church, and I saw God work in ways, even as a young person, and when we got married. You know, you have the Lord. The Lord will answer a small prayer for you sometimes, and you think, "Oh wow, well that was just a small one." It's those little small prayers that build your faith to think that God can do something greater. When He does a lot of these little things, it causes you to have faith to think, "Wow, if He's done this and this and this and this, then I know He can do this." And so from a young age, I have always been one to be very positive and seen God work in so many ways. And, you know, Brother Bernard says, and this is just me and I'm who I am, but when he married me, he said, "You know what I really liked about you?" And I said, "What?" He said, "It's because you had spunk." And I said, "Oh, I did." And I looked at him, I said, "I'm not scared of you." And he just laughed. But, you know, I've used that spunk over the years for God. You know, the word does say to be angry and sin not. So there've been times when I've been frustrated with something, and I'll just talk to God like He's right next to me, which we should. I'll say, "God, how come you're not doing it this way? Or why did you let them leave? Or why did you allow that to happen?" And I've used that spunk over the years to say, "God, I see this, you see this as a small seed, and I know you already see what you're going to do in this situation." I'm just kind of building a basic here, a basis, a foundation here. But I see, God, that you can do this. And I think it started as a child because I worked in the church all the time. When we got married, you know, went to Jackson College of Ministries. I was 20 years old. Brother Bernard was 24, and we came into a situation when Jackson. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. We came into a situation in Jackson College of Ministries where they had actually been having secret meetings and had basically converted almost half of the senior class to Trinitarianism. They were having secret communions and all kinds of things. So we went into a situation, and when you have stuff like that happen in a school, the morality, I mean, it was just, it was bad. And here I am, a 20-year-old, and he was a 24-year-old, and we came into it, and I thought, "Okay, God, I know we can help this school, but you're going to have to really come through on this." And it was that spunk and knowing that I knew God could do great things. I knew God could do big things, but I had to do my part of saying, "Okay, God, I know you can do this, so come on. You brought us here, so you do it." And so, and I'm not being disrespectful to God, but I think, you know, we're His children, and He says for us to ask. And so just through the different stages of our marriage and our life in working for ministry, I have seen Him over and over and over again prove Himself. But there have been some times that I have almost looked up there and said, "You know, God, I see this as something I want." You know, let me back up. All of us want to be part of something exciting, right? I can't see all of you, but everybody nod your head right now. Okay. You all want to be part of something big. You all want to be part of something exciting. And you know, it's a proud thing to talk to someone about your church and say, "Oh, we're doing this and this and this." And then you walk into the church and you're proud of your church and you're proud of your people because God is moving and shaking. Well, how does that happen? It happens because every one of you are doing your part, and you have that same zeal to make that happen. And you know, through all of the types of ministry that we worked in, I believe, and you know, you wanted me to talk about big thinking, and to me, and I think this is kind of funny, when your daughter sent me the the Zoom Connect and said, if you need a password, just put in pray. And I thought, well, that's a good way to start. If you want to start thinking big, you start in the prayer room. Okay, everybody heard that? You want to think big, you start in the prayer room, because it's when you are down with your face to the floor that God will give you a burden. God will give you a zeal. God will give you passion. And if you don't have it, then where do you go to get that? You go back down on your knees. So you talked about wanting to think big. You start in big prayers. You start in a prayer room. You start in a prayer group. If I'm talking to your small groups and that, then first thing you want to do, have a prayer meeting. You got people coming off the street. I don't know what a prayer meeting is. Well, come and find out. And the first thing I always told people is, we got food. And if you think you got food, us Pentecostals know how to cook good food. And so, you have to start somewhere on that thinking big process. And prayer is the best way to start. When we started the church in Austin, we had known when we left Austin. Austin is my hometown. I have my mom and dad actually now live down the street from us. My brother is 10 or 15 minutes from me. My dad and my brother and his whole family yet do not have the Holy Ghost. And I believe God is going to fill them. And that's part of my faith building, that you've done it for so-and-so, you've done it for sister so-and-so, you've done it. And I know you're going to do it for my family too. But I knew for us coming here, it would be it'd be something that God would have to talk to me about. Who wouldn't want to move back home with your mom and your family? So when we moved here, the years building up to that, in college, working for Jackson College of Ministries, we went to headquarters for 5 years. And then we felt the call to come back to Austin to start the church. In all of those 12 years that since we got married and we came back, we knew we were going to start a church somewhere. And, people would say, oh, Brother Bernard, he's a teacher. He's a good teacher. And he knows he knows law, and he's a good teacher. I'm not sure about a preacher. And when I would hear that, and they weren't being, they weren't trying to criticize. They would just say, well, yeah, he's a good teacher. And I'm thinking, you don't know my husband. And, even pastoring, we'd never pastored before. And people would say, you're going to pastor? We thought, well, yeah, that's, I'm thinking, we're going to pastor. That's what we want to do. When God calls you to do something, no matter what people tell you, and sometimes it may sound really crazy, but you know what? God is a big God, and God is a big thinker. He thought about you a long time ago. He knew where you were going to be. He knew you were going to be on this Zoom meeting. He knew what you needed to hear. And, I'm going to say my share, and then I'm going to get off the phone, and then all the repairing is going to have to be Brother and Sister Staten. But, God knows all of that, and he knows where you've come from. He knows your background. Every one of us, like how we came into Austin to pastor, is totally different from our neighboring pastor that's 6 to 8 miles down the road. Did we come in and write ethics? Of course. We called every one of them, said, this is what we want to do. We get your permission. But for 12 years, we knew in our heart that we wanted to start a church. And in that process, when you pray about something and you ask God to give you the faith, if you have just an inkling of desire, God will take that small desire and make something big with that desire. And in all of that, it goes from thinking big in your prayer to thinking big in your faith. You have to see it, and it's not positive mental attitude. It is through eyes of faith. And I tell you what, and I'm probably going to start crying, but I wanted, had never been a church on the north side of town. And just a small testimony. I hope this is okay, Brother Satan. Just a small testimony. When we moved here, when I was a teenager here, we would pass this small church every time we would go to church. And I told my mom one day, I said, Mom, that would make a great Pentecostal church, because nobody is ever there. If the parking lot is empty. And it was called a Brethren Church. It's a Czechoslovakian church. And actually, North American Missions just came this last Monday and followed Brother Bernard along all day. And they're doing a Christmas for Christ? Yeah. CFC film on our New Life, the New Life Austin history. So it was real exciting to hear it from the beginning. But when we came, we had these expectations, but we had in our heart had thought all along of these things that we wanted to do. And when you travel around and you preach to different places, I started keeping a file, and back then it was a paper file. I love to write. I kept it on my computer too, but I love to write. So I had a file of what not to do and a file of what to do. So you find things that, oh, I like to do that. I'm going to do it that way. Or, oh, no, that's not me. That wouldn't work with me and my husband. And so you find ways and you build up. Okay. And so anyway, we came here, but there were things that I saw in eyes of faith, and I'm a visual person. I have to see something. I can't just go into a building and say, oh, I think this would be great in this color. Someone's got to help me. I've got to see it. I can't just think it. I have to see it. So in my mind, I had things that I thought, okay, God, my spunk's coming out. I said, okay, I'm going to think. I guess what I'm saying is I came into the project of our church, okay? And Brother Bernard and I had already talked about building, doing daughter works and helping the area. The area had not had a history of not ever cooperating with one another. They just really didn't like one another, and I just have to be honest. And our big goal was to create unity in this whole area first, and we were going to be the ones to help to cultivate that. But we had these ideas, and when you're thinking big, it's not just, okay, I'm going to think big, or God, give me this faith. You need to sit down with pen and paper and think of every possibility that could happen. Okay, am I focusing on, you can just nod, Brother State, am I focusing on small groups tonight and what they're doing in their groups, or just overall? Overall. Okay, so, you know, even, okay, so with church building, that's my experience. And I'm just going to share some of how this came to be and how faith played a part in that. And that's basically my experience, is a testimony that I have of how we got to where we are today. And even in this position, I've had to have great faith, and I've wanted to see some things done, and God has done them. I'm way behind time. He has just done some moving and shaking in these 10 years, and I'm just now catching up. But when we started the church here, I had three things that I wanted to see. One of them, in my mind, I said, someday I want to see, when on Sunday morning, when I look out the front doors of the church, because, you know, the pastor, pastor's wife, and probably all of you worker bees are at church an hour to 2 hours before service starts. Okay. So I look out the door, and I wanted to see cars waiting in the street to turn into the church. My goal was someday there would be a traffic jam of people just waiting to get into the parking lot to find a place. And that was, what is that? I'm thinking big. I'm thinking with faith. I'm thinking with, okay, God, well, we don't have that kind of parking lot. Well, then you're going to have to find us another place to get us another parking lot. You know, think of ways that you can visualize your faith and how to think bigger. So that was one thing. The other thing, of course, this is 1992. So we're talking 20, almost 28 years ago. But back then, all the ushers had jackets, and they had these little pins that said they were an usher. And so in my mind, I saw coming down the aisles to take up the offering, these men with usher jackets and usher on there. And, you know, we started in our home with 9 people, but in my mind, we had 500 people already, and we had so many people that we had to have 5 ushers coming down the aisles just to take up the offering. So I thought of those things way ahead before we had even landed in Austin, because God planted just a small seed in my heart. But I knew, just through the experience of the little prayers that he had answered, that he could do some great things. You know, when you're locked in a Soviet underground border garage and they're searching your car, and you have a Bulgarian manuscript, The Oneness of God, and you're standing there and you say, Jesus, don't let them see it. Jesus, don't let them see it. Jesus, I don't want to be in prison tonight. When he answers those prayers, then you know. And it can be as simple as, God, I'm in such a hurry and I have got to stop by. I've got to pick up this prescription. I need a parking spot right in front of the door. And when he does that, you just say, oh, that's a coincidence. No, that was God answering your tiny prayer. It's everyday prayers. When you live and breathe in the big moments. And when I say big moments, if you're living and breathing, then you're in big moments with God every day. Every day is a new challenge and a new opportunity for him to do something big. Does that make sense? Everybody say amen. I can't hear you, but just say amen. Okay. So just in starting the church, you know, we started with, like I said, 9 people. We moved here We had a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and I had one to be born in 2 months. And I tell people that New Life and our daughter Lindsay and Sugar the dog and Fluffy the cat were all born at the same time. So we started with a small handful. But if we had not, I don't think that if we had expected God to do big things, I don't think he would have blessed us like he did. Does that make sense? And you have a faith and you have something that God has put in you, and you do not cultivate that and you do not put that in action, it's just like a talent. He gives you a talent. I mean, I had classical training for 12 years. Okay. And so piano. And so I went to Jackson College of Ministries with my husband and I started learning how to play gospel music. Well, it's a totally different bird, but my training helped me and prepared me for what God is wanting to do with me. Now, I don't like to be out in the forefront. I'm not really like, I could share with you my passion like this all day long, but to get in front of a crowd and speak to 1,000 people or 5,000, I'll just let Brother Bernard do that. I do it because usually it's because I have a burden for the women. It's usually ladies' conferences or ministers' wives. I have a burden to do that. And so I'm going to do it. The burden supersedes my anxiousness. And there may be some of you there that are very nervous. I'm a quiet person. Okay, God's not going to make you do something that is out of your personality or out of what you're comfortable to do. Now, that doesn't give you an excuse to not do things that you think God's calling you to do. Well, I'm just shy. No, if he's told you to do something, then he wants you to rise above that. And so in thinking big, I think when we started the church, we had all these ideas. We had this idea that we'd be a month. Why? Because we strategized, we prayed over it, we wrote it down. Within a month, we wanted to find a building to rent. Well, guess what building we rented for our New Life Austin? We rented that little Brethren church that I kept going by and saying, Mom, that would make a great Pentecostal church. Well, it became our Pentecostal church. And we were there for 4 years and we've rented it for like $200 a month. And let me tell you another little testimony. We bought land in the, probably in like 93, 94, we started looking because we believed that God was going to do something. Did we have money for it? No, but we're thinking big. If we can think it and it's in the will of God, he will allow it to happen. And you know, Faith Promise, Brother Lehman started the Faith Promise, and I don't know if you've had Faith Promise come there, and there's something about building your faith up. There's something about hearing testimonies. There's something about hearing what someone else, God did for them to allow that to happen for you. There's something about hearing testimonies that builds your faith. Sometimes you got to build your own faith up. Whatever it is, don't limit God just because you think you have a little amount of faith or that you have a small talent. God is much bigger than your talent. And who do you think gave you that talent? And if you don't use that talent for God, whether it's speaking, if you're a CPA, then you need to be offering your services to the church. How can I help you? And, you know, I'm not going to do your taxes, but how can I help you with accounting? How can I help you with budget? Everything that God has given you as a talent, that's part of that process of him creating something much bigger in you than you are by yourself. Does that make sense? I hope this is okay. I'm just going to I've got notes here, but I'm just going to go from one thing to another. Okay, so we were in a rented building for 4 years. We already started putting money aside. We had 30 people. We would do what we could. Brother Bernard just reached out by faith and asked Brother Haney at headquarters. Had been working there. He asked if he could work part-time and still edit, and that's what he was doing. He was associate editor at the at headquarters, and so they said, well, sure, we still need books edited. So he worked part-time down in Austin. Had that ever been done? No, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So you reach out and you do things that you think, I'm not sure, but if you feel the nudging to do it, then do it. Sometimes, you know, in planning, we were there for 4 years. We started building, we started saving money, and we started looking for property. And it just sounded so big compared to what we had. 30, 40 people, and we're already looking for land. We actually had one of our men of the church, which was kind of the glass half empty. He was an accountant. He was on the board. Because the minute we started church, we acted like we had 100. We acted like we had 200. if you come into a situation, you're a small group, say you've got a small group, you got 5 people, you need to already be thinking that your group is 20 people. You already be thinking of the problems that it would be to have 20 people. You need to already be thinking of how many chairs you're going to have. If you have 5 people, set out 10 chairs. You got 10 people, set out 20 chairs. Everything we did, we acted as if we were much bigger than we were. So when we had 30 or 40 people, Brother Bernard got to the podium one day and he said, we need to start saving money for land. Well, why? We only have 40 people. We're not always going to have 40 people. I see us having 100 people. I see us having 400 people. And so, you know, you speak those words. Say you're in a small group or you're over a team. You speak those words of faith. It does something to people, because if you got the passion for it, you have the zeal for it, they're going to feel that. And you want whoever you're working with to feel ownership of what God has put in your heart. And that's like Brother and Sister Staten. You've got a group behind you that feels that passion, feels that zeal, but it had to come from somewhere. It had to be birthed somewhere. And is it hard? Of course it's hard. Is life hard? Of course it is. God's not going to shield us from everything that happens. I think all the time, what about all the people that don't even know about God? We are so blessed, people. We are so, God has done so much for us. Are we in a crazy time right now? Yes, but he is still God. And this has not taken him by surprise. You can't surprise God. Okay, I'll get off of that. So we go back to having 30 people and him talking about building land, or him talking about finding land. And he said, you know what? God called us here. He's going to do the work. We're going to find it. We're going to pray. We're going to fast. We were renting this building, so we had church on Tuesday night because they had the building. And it was a Czechoslovakian group that had about 12 members. They would meet for dinner about 5 o'clock. They'd have a Bible study, and they were through by about 6 o'clock. So we could have actually gone in there on Wednesday night, but that was their night. So we'd go on Tuesday night. Well, Tuesday night to Sunday night is a long time with a young group, and most, you know, most of them didn't have the Holy Ghost that were coming. They were all new. And so we would have prayer in our home. Yes, with a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old and a baby, house had to be clean every Thursday night. It's amazing what you can find places to hide things. I put shoes in the dryer. I put notebooks in the dryer. I've thrown shoes. I mean, you just last minute. And the key is to be able to find where you put everything when you hide it. But we had prayer and fasting. But we had prayer on Thursday nights. It was a small group. Did we have these major intercessory prayers? No, it was a young group. But we had quiet prayer. We had fervent prayer. They prayed. But what those prayer meetings did in that small time, and of course we had food afterwards and we had coffee, and that was that fellowship time. It's not that we just love to eat food, it's the fellowship. And the word talks about us fellowshipping together, and we're family and we stay together, and that's how we do it, is we drink coffee and we drink our diet, whatever, and you eat whatever, good stuff, healthy stuff. And so anyway, but those prayer times that we had did something and ingrained in us that we all are praying together to see what God is going to do. And by Sunday, it was amazing. Some of them, they would bring their prayer requests, and some of them were very small. I need they're thinking about giving me a raise. It's a very small raise, but can you just pray that it goes through? And I'm talking 50 cents an hour, and they would come back Sunday and say, you wouldn't believe what God did. And Brother Bernard looked at him and said, you got that raise, didn't you? Well, that's a small thing, but to them, it's a big thing. And so it built their faith up. By Sunday, we'd been praying. So God started doing things. Why? Because we were looking ahead. We were thinking bigger than we were. We already started looking for land. And around 94, there was a little bit of an economy dip here. There was a doctor that had bought 4 acres, probably maybe a mile from where we were renting, and it was just land, and we got it for a steal. He was wanting to get out of town. Now, was that just coincidence? No, I think God was building up something. And when we bought that land, the accountant, our brother, he just kind of shook his head and said, I just can't see how you did it. I don't know how you did it. But when we got in, we started building. We started, and Brother Bernard's very mindful of, He's a statistician, but he's also an accountant by degree. He's got a degree in mathematics and accounting and in law. And so he, you know, he wouldn't do anything that was not, you don't have to have all that. You just got to have your ducks in a row and be organized. And it's not that God is not going to plant things that are, you know, just out of nowhere, but he does bless organized brains and disorganized brains. But anyway, we got into this building. It took us a year or two. We got the land. That was a miracle, miracle after miracle after miracle. And we got into this building, and our rent, our payments went from about $350 a month to $6,000 a month. That is a huge, huge jump. But we had saved money through this whole time. And, you know, we were kind of like holding our breath, but the bank said, we'll do it. We'll whatever the guarantee and everything. Got all that figured out. But do you know that once we got into that first, and we had church in our gym, what was going to be the gym, we set up the church in the gym area. And then we were going to build on Sunday school rooms from there. And in the property, we could go and build a second phase for a sanctuary and turn this into gym and kitchen and all that. Why? We were thinking ahead. What can we do with this land? How much can we build out? What kind of what kind of parking can we do? Can we take that land? Because Austin is crazy on permits, and you have an impervious cover that you have to have a certain percentage, and we had to build a $150,000 detention pond. It was crazy. But God, every step of the way. Why? Because we were jumping ahead of him. God, we want to do this, so you just need to supply this. We want to do this, so you just need to, you know, we got to meet the permit people. Well, there was a war going on. You have to get creative, okay? It's not just, God bless my brains and let me do it. You do your homework. You think, God, how can I do this in a way that hasn't been done before? How can I get creative here? Okay, so we were having trouble. Well, we found out in building that the inspectors that were coming were men, but the people in the office were women. And there was a gender war going on, who was going to control this project. And we found out about that. We guess what Brother Bernard did when he had a meeting with the people at the office. He took me with him. And I business suited up, and he said, my wife and I are building this church. And when I walked in with them, the women looked like, oh, it's not just a man woman. There's a woman that's coming here and doing this. So they turned their tune around and they passed our permits. You got to get creative in thinking, okay, God, how can you do this? Help me figure out how to do this. What am I talking about? I'm talking about thinking bigger than you are right now. You Spanish pastors, wherever you are, if you're renting something, you need to already, and I'll tell you one thing, when we got to where we were looking for this land, we felt that this 4 acres was really there are beautiful trees on it. We could see where we were going to put the church. We just had it all mapped out. I said, God, you have got to do something. And I felt it in my spirit, and my spunk rose up. Sorry, mosquito, I'm outside. It's so pretty here. I don't know what your degree is there, but it's been really nice here. That's beside the point. But I thought, okay, God, I feel like this land is what we need. I want to claim this land. I want to claim it in Jesus' name. So okay, God, you're going to have to help me here. I got a popsicle stick, and I got our church business card that still had the rented address on it and our home phone number. I took 2 of those. I stapled those business cards to a popsicle stick. And Brother Bernard didn't even know I did this. And I went and I told him later. We've got pictures of it. It's like a little testimony. I went over to that land, put the kids in school. My mom took the baby. I went over there and I stuck that popsicle stick in that ground. And I said, I claim this in Jesus' name. I claim this property. I feel it, God. I think you're going to do it. It's a huge amount of money, but that has never stopped you before. It's not a limit. Finances is not a limit to God. God can plop a building down for any of your daughter works, any of your Spanish, any of your pastors working right now, even the home church. You know, if you're built out or whatever, God can find you. Even in the middle of DC, he can find a spot, an old church that's lost their members, and just hand it over to you. That's happening everywhere. Churches are just being handed over to us left and right. God can do it. We don't need to limit what God's doing. We don't need to limit what he can do. You've got to think bigger than you are. Okay, so we had, when we moved into that building, we had 125 people. But within 6 months, we doubled because the people were so excited. And we only had one service on a Sunday, but they were so excited to have their own spot. Why? They had ownership of that building. We had been building in faith, and we had gone over there. They had put their name on the concrete. They had signed their names on the stud. When we had our baptistry, they put the names of their family members that they were going to see baptized. Why? We were reaching out in faith. Everything that you can do visual to create ownership, thinking bigger, a zeal for what you're trying to do, any of those type of things, do it. I don't care how crazy. A popsicle stick and business cards, well, you know what? He did it. And then when we got to the building that we left to come and do this position, we had looked at all kinds of properties, and now we're looking at property of $3 to $4 million just for the land. And that's a big step. We'd already built out the main building there. When we built out that the first 4 acres, we had gotten up to about 700 people in those buildings. And actually, Brother Bernard promised me someday that we'd have a grand piano in our sanctuary, because I love classical and I love grand pianos. But we never were able to save money for it because we had to keep building more Sunday school rooms. How can I be mad at God at that? I can't, because it's growth, it's revival, it's what God is doing. And so one year, I guess we built out the main building over there. He bought me a baby grand for the house. He said, I'm sorry, I never could. I promised this to you, but I never could do it. So I wanted to buy it. So he's had tons of brownie points for years and years and years for that one gift. But do you know, when we left that property and when we bought this property that we had to build the main campus, when we left that property, over and over again in my mind, I remembered how many times I stood at the doors and watched the cars standing in the street waiting to come in, the traffic jam on that street. And then I would look and I would think of all the ushers, the burgundy jacket that was real popular 20-something years ago, and burgundy jackets coming down the aisles to get the offering. And what I had visualized in my mind came to pass. And I thought, God, you're able to do anything. We need to stop limiting God. We need to stop putting the brakes on God and let him do things. You know, don't be afraid to think big with people too. You've got a young person that maybe loves to cook. Put him on your ladies team, or put him on your small group that's doing baking things. You need to start hand picking people that you see talent for. Are they going to do things? Do they need training? Of course they do. Put them under your wing. Delegate every little task that you can put off to someone else. Do it. What are you doing? You're creating a team, and you're creating ownership on new people. Even if you got a family that's coming in and they don't even have the Holy Ghost yet, there are plenty of things that they can do. You put them to work. I'll never forget when we had a discipleship class that we were having, and you know how hard it is to get people to come on a regular basis, especially if they've not been coming to church, and they get the Holy Ghost, and it's like, I'm not going to go every Tuesday night. I go Wednesday night. I go Sunday. I go sometimes twice on Sunday. So they think that's a big deal. So to come on a separate night or a Sunday school class at 10 o'clock instead of coming to service at 11. So we got to talking, and I told the discipleship director, I said, you know, you need those people to have ownership of that class. And I said, what you need to do is you need to tell someone that for that whole month of those Sunday mornings, they're responsible for the coffee to be made before 10 o'clock. And you need to find someone, they're responsible for setting up chairs for that classroom. Someone else responsible for bringing the goodies and put them on rotation. And he had 6 or 7 people that he gave jobs to, little jobs. Anybody can make coffee. Anybody can bring breakfast burritos. Anybody can set up chairs or take down chairs. What happened? He created a group that created an ownership of their job, and they were there. And he had some that he gave them responsibility to break things down afterwards. Those people got in there enough to start hearing the teaching, but they were really there because Brother Husledge told them that they needed to make coffee. They didn't realize that he was snagging them in. And so they would come for those discipleship training. And then they got to realizing, I'm just like my friend here. They're struggling too. What are they doing? They're creating a fellowship and a bond with people they would never have created. And then they started bringing their friends to the discipleship class. The class doubled simply because they created a synergy there in that classroom of ownership. So if you're thinking big, you need to be thinking big in practical ways. Okay. You've got, you've got a daughter working, they're running 30. Okay. God, I see 50 people in here. You need to start teaching and start training and start leading as if you don't have 30, but you have 100. You need to act like you're 100 strong. When you hit that 100 mark, you need to act like you're 200 strong. When we got to the 100 mark, Brother Bernard started communicating to the church. Look, we're going to get busier. I know every one of you by name. I know your babies. I know your parents. I've been there for you. But you know what? Brother and Sister Dobbins are now here. They're retired missionaries. He's been a minister for so many years. He may come on a hospital visit instead of me, but he's coming in my stead. He's coming to represent the pastor. So when he comes, just know that I have sent him. What did he do? He's communicating because he's thinking, I can't keep going to every hospital visit. That would be my whole life's, that would be the whole week I'd be stuck at the hospital, because not only they want you to come when they're sick, but when their aunts, cousins, daughter, sister is in the hospital, who are they going to call? They're going to call their pastor. And your thinking is, well, that's a soul. That's a family connection. I got to go. No, you don't have to go. You send someone else, but you communicate to your people what you're doing. So many people forget the most important tool in leadership and training and thinking bigger than you are is communication. When you have everybody on board with you, man, they're going to be right there. But if you keep things holding them in because I've got the power, I'm the leader, I'm going to control, that's what causes gossip. I wonder what we're doing. I wonder where we're going. I don't know where we're going. I bet we're going. You start something. The best way to stop that is to communicate. And Brother Bernard was a very open communicator over the pulpit. And it's very important, just whatever group you're working with, to communicate. We can do this. We can think big. We can think bigger than we are. Why? Because your faith is growing. Why? Because you're praying about it. You're doing creative, practical things to think about how can we get from this point to this point. Bring everybody in on the team. How can we grow? How can we, okay, we went through all types of times that we plateaued. You can only invite your friends so many times. You can only invite your family so many times. You may have won all your family, then what? Okay, you can only invite the 8 coworkers that you work with. You may have gone down the hall and down 2 doors and started inviting them because you got donuts on Sunday morning. At some point you saturate. So how do you go to the next level? You got to get together. You got to pray about it. You communicate and say, okay, I need ideas. Where can we do? What can we do? Your area, wherever you are, Brother Staten, it may not work where the daughter work is. Every little community has a different personality. Every city has a different flow of how they do things. Austin has 5% Christians in the entire city. So we're looking at a city that, how are we going to win people? People kept telling us, how can you go into Austin? It's such a liberal city. Why else wouldn't you want to come here? There's more opportunity. You can either think, yeah, we're not going to ever win anybody, or you can say, in a big picture, thinking, God, there are so many people that need you in this city. You want people to come that are messed up. You want people that come that have problems. The church is a hospital. But if you think, God, bring them here, we'll take care of them. We will love them. You will do the work, and we'll take them from there, and we'll build them up. You have to work together as a team and communicating, but also communicating with God regularly. And it's everything that you do. If you think ahead and you ask God, God, give me faith bigger than what I'm seeing right now. What do you see? How do you see us growing? How do you see us building this ministry? Okay. And there may be times, I can't tell you how many times that I wondered, Lord, where are we going to go from here? And I did the same thing when we started looking for land for the main campus. I thought, well, you've done it once. We're going to do it again. We had felt like this one piece of property. It was 12 acres on the interstate here in Austin. And, we had been here for already 15 years. And I was like, oh God, now we can really be an impact in the city. When we get on the highway And wouldn't you know, we get the foundation built and the Lord calls Brother Bernard to be the general superintendent. I thought, God, you have a sense of humor. But because that's my baby. That's, we built this not us, God did it, but they're our babies. But we gave them over to God. But when we were looking at this property, all the different places that we were looking at, I thought, God, you know exactly which one that we need to come. And the one that we went to, we pray over it, and it just felt good. And Brother Bernard said, I just really feel like this is it. We brought the plans to the bank to see if it would work. And what did I do? I went and got my popsicle stick, and I got my church cards, and I stuck it in the ground. I said, God, this is a big jump from 2 acres to 12 acres on the interstate. But if it is your will, you're going to allow it to happen. I'm going to do my part. And I did that, and that was my part. And he had it, it brought to pass. And we ended up building a $10 million facility here. And God has blessed continually. It's, even in transition, I said, God, bring peace to this whole church. We're leaving. Their hearts are broken, but you're still in the will of God, and you're able to do it. And that church has just continued to grow and grow and grow. And it's doing fantastic. So I've just talked and talked and talked, and it's quarter till. You've got to transfer your ownership to your people. You've got to transfer not just where you are now, but you got to transfer what you see it to be. And you don't have to be 10 steps ahead. You just have to be 1 step ahead. God has already got the steps lined out. You got to believe him for this next step. And sometimes God will ask you to do some things that sound really, really crazy. Okay, God is not limited to our thinking. God is not limited to the people around us and the limitations around us. God has got things so much bigger than what we can even think. You've heard this whole thing, don't put God in a box. God doesn't even know what a box is. We just need to let God be God and believe him and trust him, even in this situation with this whole pandemic and the attitude of our nation right now. God knows all of that. And I have just continually said, God, I trust you. It is the latter day revival I know is coming, and it's exciting. And people you talk to, they may be fearful, but I say, God is a God of peace. If you go back to your knees, you're going to feel that confirmation that he is in control. And I do. I feel like we have the greatest revival ahead of us, and God is in control. You communicate to your people, you transfer that zeal, you delegate, you bring up young people, new people under you. And no, they don't all have to have the Holy Ghost leadership positions. Yes, you need to be following, and Pastor, this is your place, but your leaders, you want them to look like what God expects leaders to look like. But anybody can serve green beans after a funeral. Anybody, put people to work, give them ownership of that job. Let them be part of the planning. You may hear people and you may hear someone just say, okay, give me your ideas. And they may say something so totally outlandish, and you think they have got to still be on weed right now. I know they're trying to clean that out of their system, but you know what? You just say that, I received that, or you know what? We'll write that down. You will never use that idea, but you don't want to squelch their passion for it, or their burden, or their zeal for what you've got them part of. So I guess what I'm saying is, in all your communication, use people. But that doesn't mean you have to take everything they say and use that. You have to ask God for wisdom and go to your pastor first before you want to start anything. Now, all of you don't go right now, and 20 of you bring new ideas to pastor and say, we need to do this next week. You pray about it. You fast over it. You say, you know what? I want to see what God is going to do. I want to pray about this. Will you pray, Pastor, with me about this? I need your leading. I need your guiding. I need your directing. But if you feel God doing something, pray about it. Ask God to give you strength and direction for that. And he'll do it. And he will give you. There have been times that I've been weary, and I said, God, you're going to have to help me here. And you know what? Just out of nowhere, I'll have energy, or I'll feel a burden and a passion for something new. God knows exactly where each and every one of you are. I hope, Brother State and I have been just going nonstop. I hope some of this has been helpful. Like I said, I could just go from one thing to another, because the testimonies are amazing. They're faith building, and we need these. We need to be sharing testimonies. We need to be sharing what God, it'd be good to have a sharing time of just say, what do you see God doing? What do you see for us in the future? I see, instead of 200 here, I see 400. I see let God put in your mind, in your visual, your heart, things that he wants to do, and then believe him for it. And I'll just end with this, and then I don't know if you want me to go straight into the questions, or if you want to say something before I go into the questions. I'll just say one testimony.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is a little spunk testimony. When we were in the rented building, we had been almost a year with, we'd had one person get the Holy Ghost, and this building was plastic chairs, brick walls, vinyl floor. It was cold. There was nothing, and we couldn't do anything to change it because it wasn't our building. I said, God, you've got to do something. Out of nowhere, this lady came, and I mean, after Brother Bernard was through preaching, I would go to the piano. I couldn't pray with people because I was trying to keep enough noise going so people would feel comfortable coming to the front to pray. And so he would stop preaching and people come up and he'd start praying, but then visitors are going out the door. So he's having to go catch the visitors. And by the time the visitors are gone, the altar's quiet. So we had to figure all that out. But we had one lady come, and when he was through preaching, she just came up. She started crying. She put her hands up in the air. We were all kind of looking at her like in shock, because we've been so waiting for someone to respond like that. It's like, yes, someone that knows how to worship. And so anyway, she had been a backslider and came back to God. We were so thankful. My mom, of course, is worshiping different ones, but just the more you have to create that synergy and that energy for prayer and for God to do things. And so she was there for several weeks, and all of a sudden one Sunday she didn't show up. And then, and of course, we had we had policies, things that we did in place. If they don't show up the first, we'll call them. They don't, or we'll send a note. We missed you. Second one, Brother Bernard will call. Third one, at that time, he would go like visit them or something. So by the second time he called, well, she had left a church in the area. She left that church and she felt like she left bad. And she felt like she needed to go back to her home church, which makes sense. I mean, that's just, of course. But to me, I'm thinking, okay, what did we do wrong? We always think that we've done something wrong. Immediately, we attack ourselves. And we think, okay, what do we do wrong? And I got in the floor and I was saying, God, how could you have her leave? We just felt like we were getting momentum. What have we done wrong? And I don't hear from God visibly, just audibly a lot, but I did. And he stopped me in my tracks in prayer. And he said, whose church is this? And I kind of did this. And I said, well, Lord, this is your church. And he said, I will deem, these are the words, I will deem who is here and who is not here. And I thought, okay. But then the spunk in me rose up and I said, okay, God, I want you to replace her with two people. And I want one of them to be able to play the piano. And I said, this is your church. You called us here, so you give me a piano player so I don't have to be on the piano every time at the end of the altar. Do you know within a month's time, we had more than two people come in. We had a family of 5 come in and a young woman that was in the church and could play the piano. I thought, okay, God, I got this down. I'm going to start asking you for a bass player and a drummer and all of this stuff. But it just seems like when I fell apart, God came in and said, whose church is this? It's not my church. It's God's church. He will deem who's going to be there and who's not. All of the situations that we've had, you look back and you see God's hand, whether they were good or bad. And right now we're like, oh, when we were pastoring, that was just wonderful. I can only think of the wonderful things, but it was hard work. And it was, we counseled couples that left each other and divorced leaderships. And then all of a sudden, a year later, we're remarrying them and praying them back through. And, you don't remember all that because you see what God has done in all of the lives. It's just, I'm excited. I mean, I could talk about this forever, so I'm going to stop. So, Brother Staten, you want to say something before I answer these questions?
Yeah, I just want to say that all day long, whether it was the Zoom meeting or the service that we do virtually, there is like a thread of things that you have said that were spoken, that God is indeed speaking, surely to me, but also to us, the leaders of Living Hope, that it's practical ways of thinking big. And
Yes.
I just wanted to assure you your your talk, your talking to us has not fallen on deaf ears. We it's in the flow of the Spirit, and we are we are looking at facilities in DC, and they
Yes.
are very expensive. But
Yes.
we heard what you said, you know. So
That's
somehow,
nothing to God. Now, you're all on virtual still right now.
yeah,
So you have to be creative even in that. I
oh yeah,
mean, you meet at parks or something, say six, 6 feet from another or something, get a guitar and get a neighborhood group going or something.
well, that's why here we are tonight. This is creativity. This is a
Yes,
Sunday night talk that we must we must move forward, but that takes faith.
it does.
And you I mean, I'm sure you know that, but you have ministered to us in some very the areas where God is directing us. So,
That's
um,
wonderful.
but
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that makes me feel better. Being being Nana all day and being praying over this and saying, God, what can I do while I'm changing a diaper and trying to get everything done. I appreciate that. And I, I I guess some of it is a mindset. Once you get into, and I tell you, it's addicting, and it needs to become an addiction, a habit of what can you do in this situation, God. When they started closing churches down, I'm thinking, get out in the parking lot. Nobody says you can't stop meeting in the parking lot. And then, and I'm not just saying that I just, but it's like, okay, think, how can you meet? How can you be safe? And how can you meet? Okay, then you start the drive-through stuff. Whatever you have to do. I'm thinking, if I had a restaurant, I would move it all outside. I would have, put the dinners in a box. There are so many ways that you can do it now. And you have more people right now coming to your computer. Right now, if you were to see how many people are watching your service, your attendance has probably doubled or tripled, because people have family and they're going to watch in their room, in their home, because they don't have to be responsible or have to be, they don't have to make any commitments right now. But if you get the hook in their mouth, that when you get back to service and you get back in a building, they're going to come. I'm hearing testimony after testimony of churches. Now, us down south, they're opening them up more, but they're having people walk in the door and say, and they just meet them, say, "Oh, is this your first time?" "No, I've been coming to your church for 6 months now," or "I've been coming to your church for 2 months." "You have?" "Yeah, I've been watching your service every morning, so you don't know what God is doing. God knows exactly what is going on right now, and He has not forgotten any of us, especially all of you on the East Coast. He, I just, I, He's going to do it. I just know He is.
no, we take that. Uh, I think even the small things you said, because we are in the process of decision making, and
Yes.
um, I'm going to take some of those things that you said you did. We are going to do. We are going. We already know. We as they allow us to open back up, we are going to start having church in person. And
Mm-hmm.
but go ahead. You can answer the questions now, if you would.
Okay. Okay. The first one was, what books am I reading at this time? I will tell you, the big reader in this house, if any of you do not know, is my husband, that reads 200 to 300 books a year. I am not a reader I don't like to read, but I force myself to read. If you're a leader, you need to be ever growing and ever learning. Right now I've I read about 3 or 4 of them at a time, and just depending on where what I'm wanting to read. I finished reading just here a while back. It's not a new book, but Anxious for Nothing by Max Lucado. Very basic, but very good. I have not read all of his works, but someone mentioned this one, and especially in this time frame, it's a good book to read. It's called Anxious for Nothing by Max Lucado. Another one, 2 of them that we have just put out at headquarters, and I believe they're out. Light in the Darkness is it's stories on grief. And I believe that is something that we need to help people with right now, is grieving. And they're several, and it's testimonies, it's stories of people that we have, were compiled. It's very, very good. It's heart-wrenching, but it's good because you learn different ways that you can help people to grieve. Another book that I'm just fixing to start reading is Sent, is another new book out from PPH. I believe they have already put it out. Wonderful book. It's a really, really good book. Brother Bernard read it, and I said, I want to read it too. It's called Sent. And then another one that I'm reading, I'm just about finished with, and it's been very interesting. Of course, I have grandchildren, but a lot of things I can actually confirm to see. But if you have any of your Sunday school teachers that work with children, there's a whole series now called The Little Book. It's the Little series, and I don't know if any of you are reading those books. They're small, and they're actually little, but they're like just a condensed version. But one of them it's called The Little Book on Child Psychology, and amazing, just some of the testing and some of the stories, and I, like I said, I'm not the deep thinker of the family, but I love relationships, and I love personal relationships and things about people. Those are the 4 that I'm reading right now. The second question is, in thinking big, how, and being available so much, how do you learn how to avoid burnout? And this kind of goes with the 4th question, is how do you balance family, ministry, your work life? And all of our ministers and their wives, probably, I would say close to 60 to 80% are now bivocational. So that's a bigger challenge. I didn't ever have to work, but I told Brother Bernard, I will go out and get a job tomorrow. I worked for the phone company here in Austin before we got married. I was working full time, and I knew I could get hired back on at the phone company if I needed to. But you have to be in, and my sessions, I don't know if any of you heard my sessions this year for the ladies events, was be intentional. You have to be intentional in everything you do. Brother Bernard would get into the office at 8 o'clock in the morning, but his day didn't start till 9 o'clock. From 8 to 9, that was his time. So when someone would want to have a meeting, he would say, I'm not available until 9 o'clock. He was there at 8, but he's not available till 9, because he was intentional to make sure his time, his prayer, his devotion. Family time. Every Monday night in our home, when the kids were still at the home, we had family devotion. We intentionally set Monday night. No church activities could be done on Monday night. Everybody needed to have one night that you spent at home with your family. And we would have a devotion, even when they were little, 9, 6, and 3. We'd have a little storybook that we would read a devotion out of. We would read a scripture, we'd sing a song, and we'd have prayer requests. What were we doing? We're training our children that we're not just Christians at church, we're Christians everywhere. We would make time to do things with the family, but we would do sometimes just very sporadic. I'll never forget when the kids were little. We're working the church. We were in headquarters at that point, and I was full-time minister of music at the church that we were going to. And so it was busy, but I'll never forget one night, put them all the kids to bed. And then about 45 minutes later, I woke all of them up, and I said, let's go eat ice cream. Let's go get some ice cream. They were just like shocked. The number one, that mom would let them eat ice cream, and dad would let them eat ice cream at night. And we took them in their PJs to Baskin Robbins, got on the back of the van. We sat there, we ate ice cream. And I said, the only way we're going to do this is that when we go back home, you got to go right to sleep. And they did. And they remember that now, even grown, and they're doing that now. Little things. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars to do something with your family. Go find a park and take a day and just do something. Just be intentional in spending time. And we balance that. And I'm a big mama bear and a big family person. And Brother Bernard, I'm thankful, appreciates that and knows that family is very important. So we worked ministry together. Our kids, now, in ministry, we didn't make our kids go to every event that we were at. If grandma was available, we'd give them an option. I've got choir practice. I'm thankful I had that option. Or sometimes I would even get a babysitter. I didn't want the kids to be forced to come every time the church doors were open. I wanted them to enjoy living for God. I didn't say, come on, we got to go to church. Ladies, I'm talking to the women right now. You set the temperature in your home. And if you say, well, we got to go get dressed, or dad's got to go up to the church, you're setting a negative impact on those kids. Family is so important. Your family is who you take to heaven. You've got to spend time balancing your family, going on dates. Brother Bernard and I we'd look at the symphony calendar. We loved going to the symphony, and we would schedule out a date and just get a babysitter and go spend time together. We'd go to the symphony. We wouldn't talk about solving world problems, but just spending time together. And that may be one night out of 2 or 3 months. Sometimes you just feel like you're losing it and you feel like you're burnt out. Then you need to go to your pastor and say, I need to take just a week break. I need a breather. I need someone just to take a break. It's okay to take a break. And you need to be mindful of when you're at that point. And you know what? God understands that too. Burnout, and how, like, being available. We set parameters even now. But when we were at the church, Brother Bernard would communicate. Our family time is very important. You are always going to be able to find me from 9 to 7, or I forgot what the times were. But you know what? When they knew that he was available during those times, they honored the other times and would not call. Now, we'd get that occasional call every once in a while. A couple is, we actually had a call of one couple that he said, my wife has a knife and she's pulled it on me, and I'm sitting here and she's fixing to, and we had to split them up and say, okay, you go to your mom's for the night. Okay, this problem did not happen overnight. I'm not coming to your house right now. We'll meet in the morning, but you go to your mother's tonight. You stay home and put the knife away. You have to set boundaries for people. But once you set those boundaries and they know you're available at these other times, they will honor that. Being available to your leaders, set some meetings. This Sunday night meeting is great. It's accepted. It's coming. Sometimes, and I appreciate, normally you do an hour. I think we're over the hour, but be respectful of people's time. If you set parameters and they know you're going to abide by that, they will more likely come. If they know that you say, well, it's just going to be an hour and it ends up being 2 hours, guess what? They're going to stop coming. So you be mindful of other people, but also be mindful of your own family. Love yourself enough to give yourself breaks. I tell people all the time, sometimes you just need a breather. Go somewhere by yourself for 30 minutes. It's amazing what outside with a cup of coffee or a drink, just sit. And you don't have to think about anything. Just be still and let God love on you, or just think. You are going to be the one that's going to be controlling your time. You have to be organized of your time, and you have to be intentional. We took family vacations. Did we spend a lot of money? No, but 1 week out of the year, he did not preach. We just went somewhere. A lot of times we would go drive up to Colorado. We'd go with my mom and dad in their motorhome for a week just to get away. The kids always knew that they were important, and we set a priority that our kids were important. And what were they learning is that ministry is hard, yes, but it's also important, and family is part of ministry. So that kind of answered both of those. Number 3, women, how do you think bigger in a ministry position, like when you're trying to minister? Number 1, all women will follow. Number 1, if you have a husband, he's your authority, but your pastor is also going to be your authority when it comes to how you're used in ministry. You need to go by what your pastor says. And Brother Staten, I know you believe in women helping in ministry. That I feel the same way. Ask God, how can you use me? But it's not going to be. A lot of women have this idea of, like, I'm just going to be this amazing preacher. Okay, you first need to, just like I tell young ministers, women are just the same. You need to go find a nursing home and start singing songs on Tuesday afternoons, or you need to set up and find Bible studies. So you want to be used greatly, then go find yourself a Bible study. That's how you start in ministry. And I think of it as the same way. However your pastor feels, the greater and the bigger you can go, then go for it. If he feels like you can start a daughter work or start a ministry on this, then if he believes in you, then do it. But I feel very important that it is under the leadership of your pastor. Okay, that's all the 4 questions.
Amen. Well, why don't we all unmute and say thank you to Sister Bernard for taking her.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. That's all right.
Oh, when they're talking, I actually see faces.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Bernard.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I hope something that I said touched.
Thank you so much.
Oh, bless
Thank
you.
Surely we will go on dates.
you.
Bless
Yes,
you.
thank
Look at all
you.
those
Appreciate that.
people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
sister.
Oh, this
Thank
makes me
you.
want to go find a park and say, let's all meet. Oh, well, I was so glad that I could be with you. It was a blessing to me. I hope I didn't just ramble nonstop, but it sounds like maybe some things that I said, God wanted all of you to hear. So,
Very good. Very good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
well, love you guys, and it's been good to be with you.
God bless you.
Love you too.
God
All
bless
right.
you. Thank
Bless
you.
you.
God
All
bless
right.
you.
Bye.
God bless you.
Bless
bless
you.
you.
Bye.